Welcome to Exploring the Marketplace podcast. My co-host is Bob Hassan, and we are creating a conversation with Christian marketplace leaders who have careers that have been impacted by their faith.
We are also answering your questions about entrepreneurship, business leadership, careers, and how the kingdom of God changes your impact in the marketplace.
Come join the conversation now.
Welcome to Exploring the Marketplace. I'm Bob Hassan, and I am with my friend Sean Bowles. How are you, Sean?
I'm so good. This is going to be a really good episode, Bob, because we have a man I get to introduce you to, Rob Allman from CBN with us. And I mean, with media going through what it's going through today, thank God for Rob and his team and for the news, because you get to hear different perspectives on Afghanistan or presidency or these things that aren't just like the typical evangelical, like, well, this is what we should all believe. It's like you actually hear curated media. I know you and I talk about actual world events a lot. So it's cool to have one of the sources of, where I get my information is this. I'm not trying to promote CBN. I'm just saying, like, I really like that there's people in media right now that are so prolific, and because it's been really hard to trust the mainstream, right?
Well, yeah, you don't know. Do you go to the right and listen to the right? And then do you go to the left and listen to the left? And then do you pick something in the middle that's the truth? And, there's so much fear out there that is in the world, and then the media doesn't help because kind of shock value sells. And I'm just looking for somebody with character to tell me the truth.
I was talking to Abigail Robertson on another episode of a podcast I do called Exploring the Industry, which is part of the series. And she was, I don't know if it was during the interview or not, but she said one of the things we're called to as Christians is to report the news and report what God's doing. And it never had hit me up until that point where I was like, we are reporters. And even people who feel like they have more of a hearing God's voice kind of gifting or calling, or people who feel like they have, as far as they may be more prophetic ones, you are a reporter when you have that. And so it's really interesting when media and reporting has failed so miserably over the last 2 years specifically, but there's really good people involved who haven't failed and who are doing a good job, but it's been clouded by maybe the partisanship of current political events and the climate of spiritual perspectives that are so rampant right now. So I'm excited. Let me tell you about Rob real fast.
Yeah, tell us.
He is the vice president of news for CBN Broadcasting Network, a position he's held since September 2004. And CBN News has operations in Virginia Beach and Washington, D.C. and Jerusalem, which is really cool. Wow. He came to CBN from KTVT, the CBS-owned station in Dallas, Texas. Rob has worked in broadcasting now for 37 years with other stops in Washington, D.C., Chicago, and Cincinnati. Rob and his wife, Peggy, will celebrate their 25th wedding anniversary. They enjoy spending time with a blended family of 6 children and 5 grandchildren, with one on the way. And Rob has just been somebody who I really enjoyed getting to know through my connection and relationship to CBN. And he just comes across as such a father. We need voices like this. But for you, Bob, right now, as far as like, if you had a friend who came and told you, like, I wanted to work in media 20 years ago, that might have been like, oh, okay, that's interesting. But now if somebody said it, would you be encouraged by that friend? Or would you be like, oh, I can't wait to encourage him? Or would you be like, maybe pick another opportunity or career based on what's going on right now?
That's such an interesting question. I would be excited because I think that we need in every industry, in every sector, in every demographic in the marketplace, we need people of character. We need people that we can trust. And if someone came and said that they were looking at that, of course it's hard. I mean, how hard would it be in media? How hard would it be in politics? How hard would it be in construction? How hard would it be in the ministry?
So hard.
It's all hard. So, but sending people of character who love Jesus, who are trying to do the right thing, I would be encouraged and excited and want to encourage them.
Well, just one thing to add to that is I had a friend from another Christian news agency who reached out and he was saying, we're just getting so hammered by a lot of Christians who are unhappy with how we're reporting right now. And I just feel like there's never been such a light on us where we've had, God has given us so much direction to do this, but we've had so much negative criticism. And I said, welcome to the world of being a voice in the church, basically, because pastors deal with that all the time who become prominent. If there's a prominent pastor, whether it's a Joyce Meyer or Joe Osteen or whoever, they're the most scrutinized ones. I mean, if the more fame or favor you get, the more scrutinized you get. And you guys are now doing it in media, which is being highlighted both in a negative and positive way right now. So welcome to the club of having God's influence on your life. No matter what profession or career you're in, you will be attacked. And I think it really helped him to go, yeah, this is actually like part of the promotion of doing what God's called us to. It's measurable attack. And I didn't realize that was going to be part of it. And so some of you who are listening, maybe it's not media, maybe it's something else. The moment you start getting attacked, remember, like whether it's by other Christians or whether it's by other people, that's actually part of the price you have to pay to do something significant with God. As a matter of fact, one of my mentors said, if you're not being attacked, then what are you doing? Like, what are you doing that has any impact at all? And I was like, not that you should anticipate a life of warfare all the time, but just in the sense of like, is what you're doing actually changing anything? And I think that that's important.
That's important. Well, up next, Rob Allman.
Hey, my fellow explorers. We have a brand new book out, and if you've ever been given a word that you're a Joseph, an Esther, a Solomon, or a Daniel, you need to learn how to hear God the way that they did. You need to have that place inside of you that connects to God, that can believe for His solutions on the world today, and for His problem-solving ability, His wisdom, His strategy. And so we've written this book called Wired to Hear, and it's connecting God's voice to your career and place of influence. You are going to love this book. I want to encourage you to get it today. My friend Bob Hassan, who does Exploring the Marketplace with me, and myself wrote this to take you on a journey of how to succeed in your place of career with God's voice and with connection to Him. Visit Bowles Ministries today and look up Wired to Hear, or go to any bookstore you know and you should be able to find Wired to Hear. But get it, review it, and share it with someone else. Well, welcome back to the show, and I have here Rob Allman. And Rob, I'm so excited to have you on. This is the first time I've actually been face to face with you.
Yep, we've talked often and emailed, but it's great to see you and be able to talk with you both.
Yep.
Well,
good to meet you, Rob.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys get to meet, because I've told Bob about you through the last year and a half, especially because you guys have been covering so much news. This is like, what a time to be in media. It's like in a century there hasn't been this much news all at once, and you guys are covering things in such a Christian but real way. And when I say Christian way, you guys are a faith-based company, and there's not many places you can go to where it's not neutral, and you guys are pretty neutral in a lot of ways. You guys are covering from lots of sides of different issues, and I'm sure that's super challenging. I know I work with a couple different teams that have news arms, and you guys seem to be consistently all these years be the most I think mainstream that anyone from the evangelical faith and even beyond could really listen and go, okay, wow, that's a really good take on that, or that's a great way to hear that. You also position news that helps to inspire faith, which is really, really encouraging to me. I go to CBN News every day just to see what's going on.
We appreciate it.
And I'm sure many of our listeners do as well. But talk about how you got into media, because this is a big deal.
Well, as you can tell by my gray hair and the lack of it, I've been in it for quite a while. It's going on 35 years or more. And the way I got into it was, frankly, by accident almost. And when I transferred school back then, they didn't have a journalism department. They had communications, and it said radio, television, and motion pictures. And I said, I like all three of those things. So, I just decided to go there. And then as I began my internship, I went to a local news operation, and I saw all the chaos, all the yelling, all the assemblage of trying to start the day with nothing and work up to a finished product, all the things that got in your way. Yet at the end of the day, it felt like a win. And then the next day was it all over again, but with a different circumstance. And I said, that's what I want to do.
Wow.
I don't want to do something that's just run of the mill every day. I want to have to deal with this. It is stressful. Some of us enjoy stress, I guess. And I like to manage people. There's nothing, and maybe that goes back to playing team sports. There's nothing like getting people together, everyone knowing what they're supposed to do, but then coming together, challenging each other at times when you need to be, because you're really going for a goal, no matter what that is. And in many respects, that's what we're called to do. I've been watching The Chosen, and that's what it feels like, is that we've been chosen to do this.
Well, and kind of fast forward a little bit in your career, because you started out in mainstream news and then you ended up in the faith-based world. What was that transition?
Well, my dad was a pastor. Both of my grandfathers were ministers. And in fact, when I interviewed for a job in DC, my prospective employer said, so with that background, how did you get in such a sinful business? And I said, well, the Lord has different roads. And it's certainly the case of where I wasn't where I should have been at that time. And however, the Lord helped me excel in the business. And at a certain point, around about the time, frankly, when my father passed away, it was a giant wake up call from God.
Mm.
And then when the call from CBN came a couple of years later, I firmly feel that God had to sort of send me somewhere else to get what CBN possibly needed at the time,
Mm-hmm.
and to put me where I needed to be at the time.
Mm-hmm.
I
Wow.
firmly feel that, because when I came here, Pat and Gordon, they sort of said, we want you to focus on A, B, and C, because that's not what we're doing. And those were things that I just finished training years for,
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
and being able to do that. And so, that's how it happened. Fortunately, it worked out in that I was the assistant news director for a guy in Chicago, good Catholic guy. He left there to start a headhunting agency. This is in like 1990, 92. Fast forward, as you say, to 2004, CBN contacts him
Oh, wow.
to do the candidate search for their news director. He knew of my faith because we talked to Faith, and we also worked together 1 and 2 in the newsroom. I was the only person that he recommended. And I think I was the only person interviewed for the position, and I was able to get it. If that's not a show of God at work,
Right.
I don't know what it is. And in our world of faith, I tell people this often these days. We are supposed to have the faith to believe in mighty things, and we do. Still, when they happen, there is nothing more amazing. I don't want to say surprising. So it's a close thing between surprising and amazing that you just almost get chills. Because when God shows up in a mighty way, there's nothing like it, because it can't be explained. Other than God.
I like to use the words pleasantly surprised, because it is, just like you said, a combination between amazing and surprising. And we shouldn't be surprised, but I always
not at
am.
all.
It's like, oh my gosh, he showed up. He did this thing we've been praying for.
Yeah, exactly.
I love how you said that your background in team sports has caused you to be able to build what we'll talk about as a team over at CBN. And talk about that a little bit. Like, when you got there, I assume your department was new, and you built.
Well, certainly had to build, because I hope not too many of them watch this. No, I'm just kidding. So when I came, it's like entering into. It was certainly not a broken machine by any means, but it was one that had been operating in a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's much like anything else, is you're just sort of having to retool a little bit. And you ask God to help you recognize what sets the people apart who are there, and what they may have, to then lead to what we're trying to build. How many times have you seen sometimes a manager go to a team that's not doing really well, and all it takes is a manager and a couple of building blocks to get it started,
Right.
because you go in the right direction, or you go in a different direction. And usually what I've tried to do in my career is not to make too many decisions too quickly. I like to almost spend the first couple of weeks just observing and watching and listening, seeing how people handle things, seeing decisions that are made, seeing how people are open to discussion, and such, so that then I can try to come in and because there's no way that you can say everybody's fired, we're going to start afresh. So you have to, and not that you would want to, but so that's part of that, building the team. And then there are some folks, I was telling somebody, I wear a rubber band around my wrist, mainly because God has given us tremendous capacity. And what I tell folks is, my job is to try to sit there and to help stretch you and see how far you can go. What you were doing today, I want you to get that today. And then I want you to know that that takes you just this amount of time to do it, and that you start doing it better in less amount of time.
Right.
Not so that you can rest anymore, but so now you've got more time to do something new and something different, because news never stops. There's not just one deadline a day. We do the 700 Club on the air at 9 a.m. in the morning Eastern time, and that's like working a full day for me sometimes. But then you've got other newscasts, other deadlines throughout the day, I'm sure, much like you all do, and those who we're talking to today.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, one of the things I really loved when Bob and I both read the show notes was just how you feel like some of the miracles you've had in working there and leading there is just the employees. Like you've had some really big wins. Talk about that, because I know a lot of people, it's the staffing is one of the hardest things for any company or position or leadership or whatever, management. And so when you can say you've had miracles there, I know for me personally, like I've had some miracles, thank God. But I remember the years I didn't. When I was like, I had people who I had to hire that were under talented or underqualified because we just needed all hands on deck. And I love when there was that transition where God began to bring some miracles. But what is your story in that?
Well, when I have almost gotten too involved in the hiring process, in that there's somebody who I think is going to work, so I go and I pursue them. If it's not of God, it shows up. I mean, either because the interview process is a train wreck, or you hire someone and they don't turn out.
Right.
And then it just seems like almost with every position, especially every key position, that something that you just really need is our HR department will send me something, and I'll just look at the person's name and possibly where they are now. And I'm just sitting there going, number one, how in the world did they hear about us? Possibly. Because when I got the call initially about coming to CBN, I had to tell the HR person, I really didn't even know you all had a news department. I knew about the 700 Club, but being in local news, I really didn't watch it. So I'm sitting here saying, how did this person find out about it? And if you were to come here and survey, I would say 90% of our news team, who certainly started since I had, and even those before it, will all give a divine meaning and a divine reason and how God brought them here.
So cool.
And I've never experienced anything like it, guys. And it is something that while I may fret over an opening that, just sort of stays there for so long and I can't get it filled, but when God shows up, like we were just talking, in those cases, I'm not necessarily pleasantly surprised. I'm truthfully relieved. It was like, thank goodness, because it was getting close. But, the song says he may not be early, but he's never too late. And that's what we sing.
Yeah.
And it still is something that also just keeps us going, right? I think in the Word, when you see why God will bless certain people, certain movements, certain churches, it's because he sees that there's growth. He sees that there is fruit, and that's the key thing.
That's so good.
I think over your career, Rob, I know in my career as I've gotten older, I've become more patient. I've become more caring, more empathetic. And I'm wondering, in your career, you're such a fast pace, high energy, high stress. How has that worked for you?
Maybe it's grandkids. Maybe it is.
Exactly. There you go.
There's something that changes. Now, when I came here, I know that I was unfortunately quicker to get angry, that I was in a much more pushing kind of mode, because most people tell you if you start a new job, you really have maybe a year to make that true difference.
That's
before
good, yeah.
Some things start to just sort of get back a little bit, and things start to happen, and so you've got to take advantage of that. And I certainly did. And part of that, I think, was just because of the training in local news business and in the way that you do. And I'll have to admit, there were some people who even here outside of my department would say, I'm glad I don't work for you.
Wow.
Sometimes I would take that sort of as a badge of honor, unfortunately. And now I'm sort of looking at it as different ways. The more that we get into the Word, and the more that we see things, and like I said before, and I'm not, Dallas Jenkins isn't paying me for this or anything like that, but the second season of The Chosen has helped me so much.
So cool.
As much in work as it has in anything else.
Yeah, I agree.
Because there was one episode to where he's talking to Peter and he says, it's not because of what makes you alike. I don't want everybody to be alike. It's the differences that make everybody fit together so much more. And that's what I've tried to rely on. And also, COVID made a big difference. People's lives changing make a big difference. We've had folks either, we've had a couple of people have cancer. We've had other tremendous negative things that have happened in people's lives. And as a department head, especially for a ministry, there is a church aspect to it.
Right.
That we're here to love you more than the place.
Yeah.
And I think that someone told me the other day, they said, maybe it's your dad, but you've become more pastoral. Any other time, I don't know that I would have taken it right, but it was just something that just felt great.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah.
It's amazing too that it's happening at just the right time. It's happening like you're seasoning when the company, the organization, and the faith-based, the ministry aspect of it needs it because of what we've been going through. And I hear that from you in our conversations. I just feel this very fatherly type atmosphere that you put out, but I also feel like you're all about, no nonsense too. I feel like both sides of it, but it's just you exude that now. And I'm not sure from your own estimation that you would have always thought you exuded that, but you do. I think that's really special to be in the environment. I think it's something we should want to emulate. Those people who are leading another, whether you're a woman or a man, to be able to have that, what you're calling pastoral, what I'm calling fatherly attribute, because I think especially in the media world, like when you get into, if you were in another company right now, no one's going to honor that attribute as much as they are performance. And I love that you're in an environment where it's actually needed. It's actually needed to be placed there really good. I kind of want to switch the conversation or kind of shift it a little bit though into media in general in the sense of what you are going after. Because I know there's people listening right now. There's the, media is at the all-time trust low in history. We're having, people who are getting into battles in their own family systems. Excuse me. Getting into battles in their own family systems and structures because of what they're hearing from their particular news agency or what they are listening to versus what their family listens to. And media is not a source of hope and comfort right now in most aspects because there's a new story every day that would be last year's biggest story, the year before's biggest story. But it feels like every week, people are fatigued from how much new stuff's happening, natural disasters, political climate, spiritual, pastors failing and falling, like things are happening that on a scale, I'm sure as a company that you guys have had to report that's never happened before. So talk about like media and why you have such a drive to still be in it and why it's important for us.
Well, fortunately, I still love to come to work every day. There's an excitement to it for me because I feel that there is a great service in what we do. To use a term, I guess, is overused, certainly in maybe the Christian world. We want to be a seeker. We want to be a seeker organization. And what I mean by that is these days, if you believe a certain way, there's a media operation that you can go to who's going to tell you you're right.
Yeah.
Right? No matter if you're on the right or the left, I can go watch somebody who's going to tell me that my way of thinking upon a certain subject is going to be confirmed. Now, the only subject that I want to help confirm, if nothing else, is the love of Jesus Christ. So that's certainly you're going to get. Beyond that, we really focus on, no matter what the story, is telling both sides of a story and hoping that the viewer will use that to decide what they believe is out there. Credibility is important to us. The only way that you can do that is to make phone calls and talk to people and get that information. And I try to push everybody, even if they're just doing a web story, whether it's nothing, I said, I will ask them about it. So who did you call for that? Who did you email about that?
Yeah.
Right. Because it's so easy in today's world to just curate media and we will do it. Right. We may see something on another outlet and we say, wow, that's a good news story. And the folks, there's not enough good news stories out there. And we find, bar none, that that's what people want. That's what they want to hear and they want to see and they want to experience because of everything that you just spoke about a few moments ago. Whether it's COVID, whether it's Afghanistan, whether it's terrorism, whether it's anything, you name it these days, people want to argue. In fact, when we do live interviews with people, we don't bring on two separate people to just sit there and talk over each other. If we have a subject like that, We may do the one side, then do the other, but we're not in that same business. Somebody said, you're not like CNN or the others. I don't want to be.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that. I don't want to just do the same story all day and just then bring talking heads in to talk about it. If you can't advance the story, there's really no reason to do that. Somebody said, well, why do you do what you do, and why are the stories that you turn? I said, well, growing up in the business, and most media people that I know, they wrap themselves in the Constitution. I'd rather wrap myself in that.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
We answer to a higher document.
Mm-hmm.
Now, on the plus side, a lot of the people who wrote the Constitution also wrapped themselves up in this document.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think a lot of people just have to remember, and they have to continue on. And there are times when I know that, we usually say if you're doing the right thing in the media business, you're going to be an equal opportunity offender. You're going to offend both sides.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with that. And then when some of my folks sit there and sort of say, there's so many things out there against us and everything, as I was reminded of not the movie, but the story in the Bible, the chariots of fire. In 2 Kings, Elisha's out there against the Syrian army, and his servant says, "What shall we do?" And Elisha says, "Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them." And then Elisha prays, and this is what we need to do for our folks. "O Lord, open their eyes that they may see." And when the servant looked again, he sees the mountain full of horses and chariots of fire of the Lord. Yes, Elisha and his service were surrounded, but not just by trouble. They were protected by the Lord and his mighty power. And a lot of times we focus on those forces that are against us rather than those who are with us. And I firmly believe that that's what we're called to do. And if we can get somebody to come in and read, watch, listen to a couple of stories, that's why I'm glad that the 700 Club begins with news. Because usually right after the news there's going to be some salvation story.
Yeah.
Somebody gets that opportunity then to hear the word of God and maybe make a decision.
It's beautiful. I know I've met several people through the years. I was in a jail one time, and I was in a Bible study in the jail leading it. And some of the guys were talking about their salvation stories, how they got saved. And two of them got saved from watching 700 Club in prison. Sorry, not jail, but prison. And it was just so cool to hear that. I've heard that story over and over through my years of just shows how powerful media can be and how storytelling can be. And you guys have been doing that for so long. I know there's probably people who are listening who are like, we want to be on the good side of that. Like they still have a drawing to media, or it's drawing to tell the story, or a drawing to do this, but there's so much confusion out there on how to do it well. I love that you guys are putting, forward that model, because I think that like people who are listening to this are going to be more curious to say, I want to watch and see what they're doing. Like I want to see the why behind it, not just at face value. Everyone's heard of 700 Club or CBN, probably if they're a Christian, but the why is huge. And I love that you just answered that why. It's just so awesome.
Yeah, what really got me, Rob, is that I just kept thinking about your character's coming through over and over and over again about how you report stories, what you want people to hear, that you want them to hear the truth. And we all need people that we can trust. And when I hear the depth of the character that you have and that your department has and your company has, it just makes me want to listen and watch even more. Because every business that I want to do business with is a business not that maybe performs the best, but that I know that the owners, the CEOs have character, so that when the road gets rough, I know we're going to be able to settle our disputes because of character. And you're just displaying that in over and over and over again.
Well, that's very, I appreciate, that's humbling, and I appreciate it. It certainly has not come without a lot of testing and fire and mistakes. But I have to say, this ministry was one that I had when I first got the call. Being in Texas, there's a group called the Trinity Foundation, I think is the name of it, but they investigate. right? They like to investigate televangelists, all that kind of stuff. And I can't remember the ministry, and the ministry is not really important, but they had just done some kind of story that all these prayer requests, this ministry had called for prayer requests and a donation with those prayer requests. And at one point, the investigation was all these prayer requests were found in a dumpster or something like that. Right?
Oh, yeah.
So I start here in September. In September, we have something called 7 Days Ablaze. And that's where we pray for 7 days for our partners. And I'm sitting here and I walk in and there's somebody at each door with 5 to 7 individual prayer requests that I was handed with all of these names and what they wanted to be prayed for.
Wow.
And that was almost like God's way of sort of saying, if you had any question,
Right.
this is proof in your hand about what we stand for. Everybody is called to pray for those people who support us, but not just who support us financially, but who support us with prayer, but also those who are coming to us for help. It was very, very sobering, and it was a great thing to see in my first couple of weeks here. Almost.
Yeah, the authenticity and reality of that, I'm sure that was so grounding. And I think you're grounding us right now with that authenticity even more. And also helps, I think, people to, again, I want to bring it back to the point of to have courage to be a voice in the media. I think God wants to raise some more people up and more organizations up. And CBN has been a pioneer for that, and maybe the original pioneer for that. And we're so grateful for you, Rob, and just all that you brought. We're so happy to hear your story. I know we'll hear from you again at some point, just because we want to stay connected. But thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part.
Well, thanks for the invitation. It was great meeting you both and sharing time with you. Thanks again.
Thanks for listening to the Exploring the Marketplace podcast, part of the Exploring podcast series.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing or even rating and reviewing so that more people can connect to us. Also, we'd love to be part of your spiritual journey, and we have amazing resources at our website, www.bolzministries.com, BOLZministries.com, including other free media, TV shows, books, and even an ongoing mentoring online platform. See you there.